everyone, Reginald Scott here. Welcome to the video. Great to see you all again, and I hope you're all doing really well today. Today we have some exciting news from Colnago. They have just released a rim brake version of their C68 series of bikes, and we're going to be taking a look at that today. And also, I just want to say I should have made this video yesterday, and I should have been ahead of the curve with regards to publishing this video. I did find out about it about a day and a half ago, but unfortunately yesterday when I was driving around in my car on my way home to do this video, my engine exploded, and it's going to cost me like £6 to repair, which and at the moment I'm in a battle with my wife trying to convince her that I don't actually need a car. So one of my future videos, I'm hoping, is going to be me making a DIY bike trailer to stick on one of my bikes, so that I can actually physically show that I don't need a car, because the vast majority of times I'm carrying something in the back of my car which could quite easily fit in a small bicycle trailer. So there you go, that should be an interesting project. Let's get back to the video. So what we're going to do is look at the promotional video from Colnago. I'm going to give you my first impressions on it, and then we're going to have a look at the website, go into a bit more detail. I'm going to give you my ideas and theories about, aspects of the frame which are good or possibly bad, things that you might want to look out for if you do indeed decide to buy the bike. And then I'm going to give you some rebuttals to common objections that I get from people when I suggest that they buy rim brakes, okay? Now, this is not rim versus disc. That video is actually in production right now. I'm doing it this week. I'm still trying to get it out. The objections I'm talking about is when I suggest to people that they should buy a rim brake bike, they say things like, oh, well, nobody's making rim brake bikes anymore and I won't be able to get parts. Things like that. So I'm going to dispel some of those objections. So here we have the head tube, the bar and the stem. Now, I believe that the bike currently is only available in a frame set with obviously the frame, the fork and the seat post. And I think you get a few other odds and ends like the headset, for example, and a sticker protection for the chainstay. It's a little sticker that goes on the back, but you don't get the integrated handlebar that you're seeing in the video right now. That is an additional thing that you can buy, I guess, or you can just put whatever bar and stem combo you want on it. Personally, I wouldn't go for integrated, but that's just me. So there you go. At the moment, just available as a frame set. This styling on the front here, this Italian styling here, this unusual sort of hourglass shape, I don't think it's anything particularly aero. I just think it is for looks, and it looks very nice, so that's good. What else we got going on here? There we are. So the rim brakes for this particular bike are direct mount onto the fork. You also get post mount brakes, single post mount, but these are direct mount, so you've basically got two holes or two pivot points for the brakes. Now, I like these in some respects, and in other respects I'm not a fan. Perhaps we should talk about that later, but I'm just letting you know that there is a difference between the two types of rim brakes. I'm not going to say this is a bad choice for Colnago. I think it's a good choice, but I have my issues with them, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Right, front fork here, standard quick release front fork with standard dropouts, even with the little nubs on the end too. Now if you look back here, there's a little hole in the fork, and that is obviously a drainage hole or a vent hole during the production of the fork. There's probably a bag in there or something, or a foam insert, and that hole there just helps you pull it out by releasing air pressure. And also if you get water somehow in the fork, I guess it's a drainage hole as well. But on this side there appears to be quite a pronounced slit or gap or arch in the side of the fork. Now I don't know why they put that in there. It could just be styling. The first time I saw it I thought it was a drainage hole, but it's way too big to be a drainage hole. So there is some interesting styling there. Again, why they chose to do that, not entirely sure. So yeah, I don't know why they put that there, but it could just be styling. Italians, they do love their style. Right, side-on view of the bike. You obviously have mountings for a front derailleur. Of course, it's a proper road bike. The derailleur mount points on here, I believe, are screw-on. So there's a little metal mount that screws onto the side of the frame, or it could be carbon fibre. But it is removable, or fully removable, if you want to go one by. Why would you? I don't know, but you could do. What's interesting here is the seat post appears to be like fully integrated with the frame. There's obviously a hidden bolt or something somewhere, because there's no collar as far as I can see for the seat post. Seat post is like an arrow shape or a D shape, so it's proprietary to the frame. So if you break it or damage it, you've got to buy another one from Colnago. But the most interesting thing about it is this little slit at the top here. You can see there's a sort of a little gap and a little square shape or oblong shape here. That there is some kind of insert. It may be gel or it may be rubber or something, but what it's doing is it's reducing the thickness of the seat post, so to allow a bit more flex in it, and that is obviously to increase comfort in the bike. So they've obviously decided that the bike's too stiff, or that the rider's going to require more comfort, and so they've integrated some kind of buffer or something like that into the seat post itself. It could also be a light like the one on the Trek bike, but I don't think so. To me, it just looks like a little buffer or rubber insert there. Anything else interesting about the bike? Looks like a standard derailleur hanger. Yep, all pretty normal stuff, and I believe there is 2 points at which to mount your bottles as well, so that's all good. The cables are not like fully integrated or anything, they're standard, very standard cables. Down the left hand side of the frame as well, so perfect for British style braking, which is interesting because it's an Italian brand, but British style obviously would work better with this bike frame than the Frenchy style. He's using Look pedals, so great choice there, and he's committing sacrilege by leaning his bike against the church. Lovely, yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to be this guy who gets to ride around on beautiful Italian bikes in the Alpine hills and mountains all day long? What a profession that would be. I doubt whether that's his full-time job. Maybe he is a full-time model, I don't know, but it's not a famous cyclist, is it? Have I completely missed something here? I don't recognise him, but if anybody knows who he is, if he's a famous retired Pro Tour cyclist or something, I don't think he is, but there you go. Anyway, very cool. White helmet, white shoes. Nice. Right, let's go have a look at the bike in a bit more detail. So here we are, Colnago website. Very nice website, very fancy. Not a lot of information on here though. I dislike the lack of information, but there you go. So I'll show you what we've got so far. A product for people with sophisticated cycling culture. I actually agree with that. I think people who prefer rim brakes are a little bit more passionate than the people who've managed to sort of switch over to disc without too much trouble. I think people who've switched over to disc are a bit more matter of fact about things, perhaps maybe more analytical. I think people who are still into their rim brakes are maybe a bit more passionate, a bit more, artistic, shall we say. Who knows? The Colnago rim brake bike is a product born out of passion and love of cycling. Yes, I agree. It's a frame that transcends time and trends. That's why I ride titanium. Because of its special niche nature, very few people will be able to boast of owning one. So it's going to be very expensive. I believe the price tag is around £6,300 for the frame set. So what you're looking at right there. The bottom bracket is a T47. Okay, so it's an oversized bottom bracket, like a PF30, and then they've threaded it for T47. It will be aluminium. You can zoom, but zoom doesn't really do anything. It just makes the picture smaller, which is funny. What happened? Oh, we went back. That's what happened. Yeah, it's T47, and it's threaded into some aluminium rings, which go into the frame, or glued into the frame. Now, this, for me, is a negative of this bike. People are always saying that they want to go T47 now because threaded is the new thing, right? Threaded is back, and people really hate press fit bottom brackets. And as I've stated many times before in videos previously, there is nothing wrong with press fit. Press fit is the best system for bottom brackets. The main issue is poor quality carbon fiber frames. That is the issue. I have absolutely no problem with press fit in my Thai bike. I've built up 14 or 15 titanium bikes, all with press fit BBs, and none of those customers have ever had any issues in the last 6 or 7 years, right? Zero issues. The issue is when you have molded carbon frames, you get misshapen bottom brackets, and so press fit doesn't work properly, okay? Or the prep work isn't done by the shop. So the shop should really check roughly whether the thing's round or not, and if it's not round, they should do their best to make it round before they stick the bottom bracket in. So everyone's switching now to threaded because they think threaded is the solution. But with threaded comes other problems. And again, as I've stated before about threads in frames, if you glue in an aluminium sleeve, which is then threaded, you have a problem of galvanic corrosion. Okay, number one, because aluminium and carbon fiber do not mix well. They don't like each other, and that's going to cause problems. You have the issue of very, very fine threads, because T47 has quite a fine thread in aluminium, which is not a particularly strong material, not like steel or titanium threads. And so what ends up happening is quite often people can cross-thread things. It happens, okay? So, and once you cross-thread your bottom bracket shell, you basically ruined it. There's not much you can do with it. You can try and chase the threads, but if you really badly cross-thread it, you basically ruin the bike. The only thing you could do is maybe send it back to the manufacturer and maybe they could put a new one in, but that's probably going to cost you more than the frame's worth at the end of the day. So that's one thing. And then, so that's two things actually. And then another thing is expansion. So wherever you live in the world, there's always heat expansion. I live in a hot country, and at the moment I'm sitting in a room with aircon, right? If you live in the UK, you live in a cold country, and you go in your house and you turn the heating on. So whatever environment you live in, your bike is going to go from hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold repeatedly. And what happens is aluminium expands at a different rate than carbon fiber. And the adhesive that's used to glue the aluminium shell in also expands at a different rate to the carbon fiber and the aluminium. So over time, with that expansion and contraction, what tends to happen is the thing breaks apart. And what you end up with is a sleeve in the frame that just wobbles around and goes all over the place. I've seen it many times. And again, it's not really fixable. It can be fixed maybe by a carbon fiber specialist, but it's not an easy job. And the problem is, even if you fix it, the problem can still occur. Now, there are obviously ways of trying to, with regards to galvanic corrosion, there are ways of trying to buffer the two materials to prevent them from touching each other, but you can't get away from expansion and contraction. That's just going to happen no matter what you do. So, me, personally, I am not a fan of T47 in carbon frames. I'm not a fan of aluminium inserts in carbon frames. I'm not a fan of carbon frames, but I'm just warning you that that is a problem. Right, what next? More lovely pictures. Here's the direct mount brakes here. As you can see, there doesn't appear to be any kind of clamp here, so I'm guessing the bolt for the clamp is underneath. And there are the forks. Now, the forks have got quite a significant cutout in them to house the brake pads, or the brake shoes, should I say. So that's interesting. A lot of the time with rim brakes, you can often get the brake shoes touching the inside of the fork, or the gap between the fork and the pads is very, very narrow. What's interesting to me is how deep this cut is. This is a very deep cut into this fork. Now, obviously, all this section here is going to be reinforced because it's the mounting point for the brakes. So I don't think there's going to be any issue here with cracking or anything like that. Probably. But it's just an interesting design choice. You know, why go for such a wide mounting point, possibly to fit a wider tyre. Obviously, one issue people have with some rim brake bikes is they don't accept wider tyres. I guess by cutting these mounts in so deep into the fork, you could potentially fit a much wider tyre, because then you can expand the calipers even further out. So wider rim, wider tyre. That could be the reason why they've done it, and I think that's probably the most logical thing. What are the advantages of direct mount brakes? The first advantage of direct mount brakes is they are stiff. Okay, so they produce much greater stiffness under braking loads than do the central pivot or single pivot mounted brakes, which sit in the middle. So you've got a pivot in the middle, and that pivot can in theory bend as you apply pressure to it. Now, I haven't really experienced any serious problems with that. I think if the pivot material is, made of metal and it's screwed down tightly, it's not really a huge issue. The thing with direct mount brakes is that if you are coming down a really, really steep hill, and you are going very, very quickly, when you apply those braking forces, in theory, the direct mount brakes will do better at that job because they will flex less. So they'll give you more powerful braking. So, that is a good choice. The reason I don't like them is, number one, parts are harder to come by. Number two, they are a little bit heavier. They're a little bit more finicky. So to set them up is a bit more difficult. And if they are rubbing, you need tools. Okay, so you need to adjust them with an Allen key and get the settings on them just perfect. They are certainly, they take a little bit more effort to get set up. The single pivot ones, you can just adjust them by moving them with your hand. It's really simple. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but I can understand why they've done it. I think performance-wise, they are probably a better choice. Probably. Right, moving on. So these are some of the main features of the frame. Colnago styling. Yeah, very nice. Embossed the details. You've got the clubs there embossed on the frame. Now, it's a modular frame, hand built in Italy, of course. Fantastic. That's what you want, really. Yeah, we've got the dual pivot brakes. And we have, it says here, the dropouts are made of 3D printed titanium. Titanium is one of the few materials to bond perfectly with carbon. What's interesting is you can clearly see there is 2 gaps here where the hanger is situated. So that to me suggests that it's like a little sandwich wedge with carbon in the middle and titanium clamping from both sides. That's what it looks like. And then you've got this titanium, or I'm guessing it's titanium derailleur hanger poking out the side. Now, if this is a 3D printed titanium hanger, I think that's a bad idea, personally. If it's just the dropouts, probably okay. But if the hanger is made out of titanium, that is a bad move, simply because titanium's far too strong. You want a hanger that's got some bendability to it, some flexibility, something that's going to deform after an impact. Because if you made it out of titanium on a carbon frame, the weak point is the carbon frame. So if you apply any pressure to that during a crash or the bike falling over, you're going to damage the frame. You're going to break the frame before you break the hanger. It could be, it looks like a different color, so it could be, steel or something else, which would be better than titanium. But for whatever reason, the dropouts are made of titanium, so that's good. That's, a nice touch, I think. Nice and light as well. What do we got here? So the bike, the rim brake bike, is only compatible with electronic group set. Not my cup of tea. It would have been nice if they gave it with a rim brake mechanical option. For me, I like rim brakes because of the simplicity, because of the ease of maintenance, and for me, mechanical is much simpler, much more reliable, and much easier to maintain, in my opinion. Again, I have a father who's an electronics engineer, and I'm well experienced with electronics failing. They do fail. Even very expensive electronic items fail quite regularly. I much prefer mechanical, to be honest with you. That's just me. Rather than be stuck with electronic. It would be nice to have the choice, basically, either or. But no, they've gone with fully electronic, and that's fine, because if you can afford this bike, you can afford an electronic group set. Yeah, this bike was designed specifically for those cyclists still fond of the traditional rim brake system. Colnago wants to be there for these dedicated and passionate cyclists. So the C68 series, there's a Thai one, which has got titanium lugs that hold the carbon tubes together. It's not a titanium bike, but it has titanium on it. They've got a gravel and an all-road version. They're all carbon, as far as I'm aware. And the main road bike, which is just called the C68, and it's got disc brakes. Here's the thing, though. The kind of people, again, the kind of people who are like this, people fond of tradition, again, would prefer mechanical over electronic, in my opinion. But it's just interesting the way they're marketing it. Does this mean that rim brake is back? I don't think so. It all depends how successful this bike is. If Colnago can't, keep them in stock and they sell out immediately and everyone buys one, and the people then start sending me emails like, can I have one? Can I have one? I think they'll say, hey, this worked out really well. We should do this again. And clearly, Colnago think that there are going to be group sets to put on these bikes and wheels to go with these bikes as well. So they're not worried about that, although they are just selling it as a frame set currently. It is an interesting project, and I hope it goes well for them, because it would be nice to see other bike companies start following this as a trend, offering rim brakes as well. My main objection to the whole disc brake thing is that it's being forced upon me, and forced upon everybody else to some extent. You can still get around it. I still get around it. It is possible. It's a bit like the old, jib jab. We were coerced, propagandized, and semi-forced into getting it. You still had a choice, be a prisoner in your own home, lose your job, become a social outcast, but you don't have to take it. You know what I mean? That's the way I feel things are going with disc brakes. It's like you become a social outcast, you lose all your friends, you get excluded from stuff, all because you want to make your own private choice. So, standard warranty, 2 years. Fair enough. Nothing amazing. Here we go. Specifications and geometry. I do apologise, we've missed it. Now, so the size of the frame is a 485. I'm guessing that's top tube size. 48? That's pretty small. And it's coming in at 1,080 grams. Now, to put that in perspective, my titanium bike, T1SL, rim brake, and I ride a top tube 55 centimeter top tube, alright? My bike comes in at 1,100 grams for my frame. And this is saying frame. This is not saying frame set. It's not saying frame and fork. This is just saying the frame. So why is the frame on this carbon bike so heavy? Could it be that it's been made very stiff? Obviously, people always talk about strength to weight ratio with carbon and how stiff it can be and how light it can be. It's actually a bit of a con, because in order to get a bike stiffer, you need to add more material to the tubes, especially with carbon, being that it's so fragile. So in order to get something stiff enough to be racy, you have a weight penalty. So this smaller frame than mine is coming out almost as heavy as mine, which is interesting, because like I say, the T1SL in the small size is 950 grams. So I find that interesting. Rider weight maximum 120 kilos. Modular carbon frame construction, so it's not a lugged design like the titanium version that they've come out with. It says here fork disc brakes, which carbon fork for disc brakes, integrated cables. I think that's a mistake. It should say something else there. And what do you get? Rim brake bridge, expander, headset parts, top cap, adhesive chainstay protector, transparent. That's it. That's other accessories, sorry. You get a carbon seat post. That's it. You get a carbon seat post. And a fork. So that's it. No handlebar. No handlebar, no stem. Geometry. So O here is the center to center of the head tube to center of the seat tube. And what was it? A 485. So what's the O on 485? 485 is 535. So that's a 53.5. So yeah, the frame size at 53.5. Mine is a 55. Don't forget. 53.5 is coming out at 1,080. 1,080. So mine's this one, right? Is this, which one's mine? Oh, this is mine. So mine is a 510 according to Colnago. So my frame is a 55 or 550, center to center. Do they give a weight for that? They don't. Okay, so like I say, my bike is one size above the one they're featuring. So my bike would probably be identical weight or slightly lighter in titanium. In order to get things stiff enough with carbon, you've got to add weight. Interesting though, where's the weight coming from? Is it from the metal bottom bracket shell? Is it from the thick titanium dropouts? Shouldn't be. Where's the weight coming from? Is it integrated seat post system? Who knows? Where's the weight coming from? Yeah, folks, so that's about it. There's not really much to say. T47, direct mount brakes, fancy D-shaped seat post, and a weight of over a kilo for the frame. Right, I'm a little bit cold. Let me turn the aircon down. So, if you like carbon bikes, and if rim brakes are your thing, and if you basically own enough money to buy a small island, then this might be the bike for you. Me personally, I wouldn't buy it, but that's because of my unique objections. I don't like T47, I'm not a big fan of direct mount, and I don't like carbon. So I double thumbs up to Colnago for trying this project. Double thumbs up. I hope they do more. That's just my personal preference. I wouldn't go for it. Now, objections. So these are the objections I get from people when I mention buying rim brakes. So people will come in my shop and they'll say, oh, I'm looking to buy a new bike. And they've got a rim brake bike right now. And I'm looking at this, that, and the other. And they always mention a disc brake bike. And I'm like, well, why don't you buy another rim brake bike? You know, just something better than what you've got now. Okay, so the first objection they give me is, well, everybody else is doing it, so I feel like I have to. Okay, so me, that just sounds like, bah, bah. You know, okay, so you're a sheep. Okay, fair enough. Go your own way. Make your own decisions. Don't be pressured in by everybody else. Just because everybody else is doing something stupid doesn't mean you have to, right? So, that as an objection against rim brakes for me is not a good objection. And here's the thing. If you were to go out and buy a rim brake bike, even if it was a second-hand one, you're telling the industry that you don't want what they're trying to push down your throat. And by doing so, decisions like this are going to end up being made, right? They're going to say, well, there's still a hardcore group of people out there, and a growing number of people perhaps, if you actually made that decision with a backbone to actually buy what you actually wanted rather than just following the herd, they would say, well, there's a lot of people out there who want rim brakes, so maybe we should continue manufacturing rim brake bikes and rim brake parts, right? Okay, it's only because everybody is following the trend because they feel like they have to that it's becoming more difficult. So that's the first objection. Gone. Second objection is people worry about maintenance. They say, well, if everything's going to disc, then I'm not going to be able to get parts and I'm not going to be able to get wheels and things like that. That's not the case for many, many reasons. Number one, there are still people making rim brake bikes to this day. Number two, there are lots of manufacturers out there that are still producing rim brake parts, and they're going to continue producing rim brake parts for this foreseeable future because there are so many people out there still riding rim brake bikes. And a lot of those people don't want to stop riding those bikes just because it has rim brakes. They're going to need parts to keep those bikes going. So even if it's smaller and smaller numbers of parts, there's still going to be parts available. And what's amazing is there's just a ton of second-hand parts and unused parts floating around. Even you take my bike shop, for example, I have a bunch of rim brake stock that nobody wants at the moment because everybody's switching to disc, and it's just sitting in my shop, and one day somebody's going to need it, okay? So I'm not worried about that. And if you were worried, you'd stock up, okay? And it's pretty cheap to stock up right now. You can afford to buy a second-hand rim brake bike and stock up on all the essential parts that you need to get that bike to last the next 20 or 30 years for less money than you can get a brand new disc brake bike. So to me, it's worth it. Same for wheels. Like, you know, people always talk about, oh, you're going to wear through your wheels. In my entire cycling life, I have worn through one pair of wheels. That's it. I have 3 pairs of wheels that I'm currently using. Or is it 4 pairs? Let's say 3 pairs of wheels I'm currently using. I've had them all for, well, I've had the carbon ones for more than 2 years now. I think it's 3 years coming on. And they look like new. There's hardly any wear to the brake track whatsoever after 3 years. My alley wheels, yeah, there's quite a lot of wear to them, but the wear indicator, the safety indicator, is still on them, and they're at least 5 or 6 years old. So I would guess, on average, I wear through a pair of wheels like every 7 years, maybe, if I'm only running the same pair of wheels. And that's if Worst case scenario, I'm not washing or cleaning the wheels properly. If you wash and clean your wheels and your brake pads regularly, you will do very little damage to your rims. The issue comes when people are lazy. They let dirt build up, they let grit build up, they let metal fragments build up in the brake pads, and then they go out hard braking, and obviously you're just going to wear through your rims. But like I say, if you were worried, you don't even have to buy a full wheel set. Just buy another rim, right? Rims are cheap. You can replace rims on carbon wheels for like $100, $150, and you can get yourself another carbon rim. That's almost as cheap as a couple of disc brake pads. A disc brake rotor and the pads to go with it are almost as expensive as brand new carbon rims that you can then just switch out when the day comes. Spoke nipples are still going to be available. Spokes are still going to be available. Why not, right? They don't take up much space. Hang them on a wall somewhere until the day you need them. So there you go. If you're smart, you'd have two pairs of wheels. You'd have your training wheels, which would probably be thick, heavy-duty aluminium, and you'd have your race/holiday/weekend wheels, which are going to be your carbon wheels. So there you go. So that objection, I don't see it being valid, to be honest with you. Yeah, and if you imagine this, there is roughly about 44.5 million road cyclists on the road currently. Out of that 44.5 million road cyclists, I'm guessing most of them have more than one bike. So you can double or even triple the number of road bikes available. So there's going to be a lot of spare parts. With everyone switching to disc, there's going to be a lot of second-hand parts out there. And if you look at people like Durian Rider, he goes out almost every week and buys a new bike. Well, not a new, second-hand bike. And then he has the choice of all the parts he wants. And he builds up these super lightweight, race bikes that weigh less than 6 kilos sometimes. His bike builds are insane because he's got, SRAM Red 10-speed and Dura-Ace 10-speed and Dura-Ace 11-speed and Dura-Ace mechanical rim brake, whatever. And he can just pick whatever parts he wants and put them on a super lightweight carbon rim brake frame, and off he goes. And he does it for next to nothing. He buys a couple or 3 bikes for the price of one reasonably priced disc brake bike nowadays. It's nuts. And don't forget, like I say, lots of bike shops around with a lot of unsold stock, and warehouses. There are lots of warehouses around with box after box after box after box of brand new rim brake bikes unsold because everybody switched to disc brakes. Okay, so don't worry about parts. There's going to be parts floating around for decades, absolutely decades. I do not foresee a problem with me running rim brakes till the day I die. I think I can at least survive the next 30 years. And every now and again, someone's going to come out with a bike like this, a rim brake bike. So there you go. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was useful to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe as usual. And as always, folks, when you're out riding, please do stay safe, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye.